the tunnel of time.
On this episode, we're going up and down the broadcast trail to Reading, Pennsylvania.
TV through the tunnel of time.
It's the early 1980s and my first job in TV at WTVE-TV 51, hired by then news director Jeffrey D. Miller, who co-anchored as well with the fabulous Susie Sands. Now, 40-some-odd years later, we're still all kicking to tell the backstory up and down the broadcast trail. How it all started, the twists of fate, how it didn't last long, why it ended, what happens after, and don't miss the cosmic connection with Channel 6 and WFIL's Jim O'Brien. Sponsored by Rock's Fresh Foods with 2 locations in Rhode Island, Narragansett and West Greenwich, Date Appraisals of Florida, and Motif Magazine, Southern New England's premier arts magazine for everything local. It took a while. Trials and errors, click here, click that.
Oh, that's bad.
Sorry about all that.
Tomorrow he'd smoke a cigarette. We're showing our age.
Don't click that. No, go back. They're trying to sell you a subscription. You could just join as a guest to finally figure out how to get Susie's Zoom call to work on her end.
I have a new.
Oh, God, I'm not going to start all over with that.
I see you both, and we don't have a camera.
Well, the camera-
For a gal who is in TV news, we don't have a camera, Jeffrey.
I don't see a little. I know what you mean by a little camera, like I have on my.
Okay, so do you have a laptop?
Yes. No.
All right.
There's a
Can you-
laptop with this.
Let's try it through your laptop. Your laptop should have a camera on it. We're almost there.
Okay, I hit allow, but it's still, so I have to exit out.
Yeah, get rid of
No, don't X out of anything.
it.
Okay, well, it's in the place of where I assume that the video.
Don't assume anything with computers. I just
But all
saw,
good
yes,
things are worth the wait.
Whatever you're doing, do it again.
Well, I clicked the start video without the up arrow.
Yes.
There you go.
You're there. You're there. We got it.
Susie, what we did is just click once
I
on
don't
the.
care what you did. We're rolling.
Okay, we're just start stop video. I just clicked on the camera one time. The red line went away. And
All right. That's fine. Let's
Instead
not
of
go
doing
back. We're already. We only got 20 minutes left to do this thing. Thank you
doing
so
that.
much. Thank you so much, Susie. Grab a seat.
don't do that up arrow.
Okay, I can't see anybody else, though.
Well, just sit in the chair.
Hello. I'm
Now,
sorry about that.
Don't worry about it.
The good news is we see you. Hi, Susie.
Hello, Jeffrey. I can't see you, but
And I see you. You'll see the finished product. All right. Anyhow, Channel 51 WTVE signed on May 4th, 1980. Were you and Jeffrey there? And feel free to jump in. Were you there at the very beginning of all that?
I was not.
Tell me what happened. When did you join?
When Robert E. got really too tired to work from 8 o'clock in the morning until 10:30, 11 o'clock at night.
Who was Robert E.?
He was the original news director.
And anchor, primary anchor.
And
News
yes.
director and primary anchor.
Yes, and he was the primary anchor.
Jeffrey, when did you join? Were you there?
I was on the original staff. I came in as a street reporter, news reporter, and we shared the responsibilities of being videographers, on the street camera people, as well as news reporters. And there were several of us, and we interacted. We did both sides of the camera.
Now, how did you wind up there? How did you both wind up there? Jeffrey, you first. You had been working in radio, and then you heard about this TV station going on the air?
Exactly, yes. I had spent a number of years in local radio, primarily as a newsman. Back in those days, as you may remember, the FCC required radio stations to have news as part of their programming. And I started as a rock and roll disc jockey, but then I transferred into news and talk show host. So I had been in a couple of different radio stations in Reading as a newsman and talk show host. And then when the opportunity opened for the TV station, obviously I wanted to be part of the news operation of that station.
And Susie, what about you? You were working in radio too, and then you heard about the TV thing?
Yes. And I needed more money. And the funny part about it was I had been thinking about, and it must have been about a year into the station being on the air. And I have 4 kids at home, and I needed more money. So I was thinking about possibly calling and applying for the job. And finally, after vacillating and putting it off, I finally called, and I spoke to Robert E., and he made an appointment for me to come in and talk to him. He did an interview. They did an on-camera audition, and I ended up getting the job.
We're TV51, WTVE, Reading.
So I was very lucky.
What did you think about that? Were you, because in our phone conversation, me trying to finagle you to do the Zoom call, you had said, I kind of like the anonymity of radio. How did that leap going into television change you? Change your life?
Well, because there were 4 radio stations in Reading at the time, and I had worked at 3 of them. So there really wasn't, I didn't have much of a choice of where I wanted to go or where I could go. And I knew what radio was paying. I figured TV had to pay more. So, that was why, I went there.
Now, that was TV51 News Beat. So you didn't work on the, what was the original name of the Total News? Is that it?
Total News. Yes, I did work on Total News.
Jeffrey, did you work on Total News?
Yeah, I did. And then I also did a talk show on TV51. And then
Night Beat. Wasn't it?
It was called Night Beat.
Yeah.
And then we went through a bunch of transitions. It was a difficult assignment to come on as an independent station in the periphery of the Philadelphia market. That was a real challenge that we had as a station, not just the news operation, but the whole station. And so resources were tight, and we coexisted, so to speak, in different occupations, different assignments within the TV station.
Now, did you think this was going to last forever?
Of course.
Well, longer than it did.
Yeah.
Well, the rumblings came soon after. I mean, it was, while a lot of people watched Channel 51 doing a local news in Berks County, Pennsylvania, no one else was doing that on TV. Sales were hard. The money wasn't coming in, right?
Yeah. Again, the real challenge was from advertisers wondering who's watching you when people are watching Philadelphia TV stations and they're watching Philadelphia news. And there certainly had been decades and decades of acceptability of the Philadelphia stations. And here comes upstart Reading. Advertisers are saying, well, how do we know anybody's watching? And we still think they're going to watch Philadelphia news instead of Reading news. So it was a challenge. And enough money wasn't there over the long haul.
So it wasn't long thereafter where, just to keep the lights on, they went with select TV in certain times of the day, right?
Select TV offers something for everyone, as we were saying just a little while ago.
7506. And now's the time to subscribe to Select TV because there are a lot of big ones upcoming, including Flashdance. Did you see Flashdance, Jeffrey?
Oh, I did. It's a fun movie. It really is.
The newscast started as Total News in May of 1980. I came along in I started in the fall of 82 there. It was already called TV51 Newsbeat because it was select TV starting at 6 p.m. and they decided they were going to try one more newscast. Is that how you recall it?
We continued the newscast. We continued it, and Susie and I joined Susie at the anchor's desk, and I became the news director. And if I recall correctly, I hired you.
Yes, you did.
System and the cold front that swung through our area last night gave us thunder showers popping off, some interesting lightning and some heavy downforce, some high winds in some areas, all moved out to sea. We're now being dominated by a high pressure system right now over Michigan.
Now, do you know any of that story, Susie? What did Jeffrey tell you about how that happened?
Honestly, I don't remember that.
We're TV51, WTVE, Reading.
Jeffrey, do you remember the story, Jeffrey?
Well, I remember that I hired you. Refresh my memory.
Okay, so I had been graduated from Temple University in 81. Had to go back to being a dirtball disc jockey on the radio. I got a job.
You were a good one.
Well, thank you. At FM 97 in Lancaster, but they gave me the overnight shift.
97 WLAN FM Lancaster 502. This is RJ Heim.
And they promised me the first daytime shift that came along that they'd give that to me. But the boss also wanted me to come up with this fun comedic character. And there was a lot of radio reverends back then, doing the comic thing. So I came up with the Reverend Bob.
Fries and a Coca-Cola or any medium-sized soft drink.
The Reverend Bob Box Lunch Seminar is not intended to represent any real-life character, situation, or scenario. The intent is solely for the entertainment of our listening audience, either real or imagined.
Come on, 2 fingers. Not 1, I said 2 fingers. Give me 2 for Tuesday, cause we're getting closer all the time. Yes, indeed. Today's question comes from Eden Manor, Pennsylvania. The question, we'll get right to it today, goes like this. They said, Reverend Bob, why are people afraid of 30? And why do they find it difficult once they get there? Why are people afraid of 30, and why do they find it difficult once they get there? Very good question, you people, very good. Well, are you listening to me? There is a problem with 30. It's congested, people drive too slow, and get real aggravated when they keep reading the sign that says, center lane, left turn only. And that goes on for 15 miles of cow patties. It's ridiculous. There is no place to turn left onto. It's the darn tourists that make 30 East the most ignorant piece of roadway in Pennsylvania because... Oh my goodness, it's you're talking age instead of route, aren't you? Well, if you think about it, what's the difference? People feel the same at 30 as they do on 30, am I right? Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. They're passing through from one place to another. They got a nice means of transportation, and no one will let you go as fast as you want to, isn't that right? Is it age 30 or Route 30? But there's all those nice places to stop along the way, isn't there? Is it age 30 or Route 30? We all must go through it, but we dread it. Is it age 30 or is it Route 30? Is there any difference? Are you listening to me? As I said before, I'll say it again. Life is a route. Yes, at age 30. Ride it your best and quickest without getting pretty dirty. That's my words of wisdom for you today. Until next time, at this same time, this is the Reverend Bob saying so long and bye-bye.
RJ Heim.
If you have a question for the Reverend Bob, call him right now. He's not going to be here too long. 1-800-732-0001, 397-FM97. We particularly like to hear from the people who drive Route 30. Chicago, lunchtime on FM 97.
And all of a sudden, that he wanted it on at 2:10 in the morning on my overnight shift, midnight to 6 a.m. And then a daytime shift opened up. And he passed me over for it because he said people are waking up at 2:10 in the morning when you're airing this thing, and they're leaving their radios dials on FM 97. So it helped the morning show. That's why he passed me over. Well, I was mad about that. And even though I had a contract, I left and got a job. I was offered a job at Hot Hits WFEC, Fire 14, Top 40, just like WCAU-FM Hot Hits had put on their format. So it was going to be a daytime shift. They gave me a living room and more money. And I just changed my name because I was still under contract in Lancaster.
You're listening to a brand new Hot Hits survey on WFEC. We're going to count them down at noontime today. This is Robert Walker from number 19 last week to number 5. That's the Human League.
WFEC 14 forecast.
Maybe some rain today. High of 67. Rain continuing on and off tonight. Low 62. Rain Sunday. High of 68. East winds at 12. 80% humidity. Temp 64.
WFEC Hot Hits. WFEC.
However, that gig only lasted 6 months for a host of reasons, which we won't get into right now. But there was some politics behind the scenes and such.
We all understand that.
Yeah, right.
Been there, done that.
So long story short, there was a guy named Chris Shearer, and he had been an engineer at TV51 in Reading. And when I was on the outs at the radio station in Harrisburg, Chris said, I was working at Channel 51 in Reading, and they're running out of money, but I hear they're going to try to do a newscast one more time. I said, Chris, I'm putting on my suit. You're taking me out to Reading, and you're going to introduce me to everybody you know out there, and I'm going to finagle my way into my first job in TV. And that's what he did. And that's when I met you, Jeffrey. You said, well, we don't have a budget. We don't have any money for a weatherman. We don't have a weatherman. I said, let me just do an audition for you. You fired up the lights in the studio. This is the abridged version, of course. You fired up the lights in the studio, you rolled tape, and I did my best Jim O'Brien impersonation.
Yes.
52 degrees, broke the record wide open today for the maximum in Caribou, Maine.
And you said, I think we can make this work. But he says, keep your unemployment from Harrisburg going. Then you said, I want you to make an appointment to go down to the CETA office, Comprehensive Employment Training Act office, which was set up for migrant workers, which I thought was a fascinating twist, to start my TV broadcasting career, getting supplemental pay from a federal migrant program. And then you paid me 2 hours a day minimum wage, but I had my first job in TV.
Yeah, now I'm remembering part of that now, but I'll tell you, RJ, I thought you were good. And for people who don't know who Jim O'Brien was, he was one of the funniest weathermen ever.
He was the best.
Well, let's change gears for just a moment. A couple of weeks ago, Jim O'Brien, if you recall, put Zap, North Dakota right on the map. Tonight, the spotlight falls on Thermopolis, Wyoming, right?
You may be asking why in Wyoming is
Why?
there?
Why in Wyoming?
Why? Did we ever leave Ohio and go all the way across here to Thermopolis, Wyoming? Well, that's where we were exactly 1 year ago. I say we, meaning Steve Levy and I, on our trek to Alaska last year. That's where we were. About 90 degrees in Thermopolis today. A place out there called Hell's Half Acre. Remember that? I had about 32 calluses in a very tender spot about that time, but it was a great trip, and I wish we could do it again. Well, okay, Jimbo.
Tomorrow you tell the story of the Irma Hotel.
Yes, we will.
Yes, you will.
Because that'll be another year anniversary.
Yes, it will. The rookies are next on Channel 6 for the entire Action News team. I'm Jim Gardner. Good night.
Hope they didn't have plastic seat covers.
I grew up watching him, and that's all I could think of. He was my mentor in third grade, and he didn't know it. That's when I made up my mind I wanted to be him. I wanted to be a radio DJ.
Well, here's the word. Beulah, the boss music lady, has a great recipe for catfish and sauerkraut, but she's not going to share it with you today. She's just going to take artists. Call 263-8900, 966-3900. Give us your favorite artist. This is all balloting for the Hall of Fame. Oh, girl, the Shy Lights. I'm betting on it being number one at WFI. It's 10:10 Hall of Fame time, and Jim O'Brien and Beulah, the boss music lady, are pulling a little.
And then he popped up on WFIL-TV. That's what it was at the time, now WPVI. And it solidified for me in the third grade. He's a great DJ on the radio. He loves weather like I do. And now he's a weatherman on TV. I'm like, I want to be him.
Yeah. Well, you had his modus operandi. You were funny. I enjoyed it.
Press it and make sure it's firm and doesn't have any soft spots. Okay, well, we're going to be talking more about the Florida citrus industry in the next few days. In the meantime, we're going to go over to RJ, and he's got all the weather.
Thank you, Susie. Aren't you glad I got the weather for you? They're nice oranges, aren't they? I'm going to save that one for dinner. What we do...
Well, that's why I hired you. That's why I hired you, because you had pizzazz.
Yeah, like life hadn't knocked me in the teeth yet and punched me in the gut enough. So I was, all of 20, 22, 23 years old. And wow, I had my first job in TV. Now, Susie, you were fun too. I don't have much tape of you because, of course, my air check tapes, I wanted tape of me, and tape was in limited supply.
Yes, it was.
Because the money was running out, you know. So, but I do have some clips.
This is the first time in recent years that males have captured the #1 and #2 spot in the spelling bee competition.
What do you recall of that time when it was TV51 Newsbeat? Were you on top of the world?
Oh yeah, it was. Yes, and it was a lot of fun. We had a good time. We had a good group of people that we started out with, and some of them I had worked with before, and some of them were brand new to me that I didn't know. But it was a group effort. Everybody tried to do their very best, and they kept trying to sell the thing. As you mentioned earlier, they were trying to sell the thing as we're the first cable station, and we cover the major markets in the United States, because apparently, according to what they told us, and Jeffrey, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't they tell us that we were on cable systems that covered part of New York, Jersey, Washington, D.C. And so we were, they tried to, and that's how they tried to sell it too, but people didn't buy that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we didn't have much appeal to anybody outside of the greater Berks County area. But let me tell a quick story. Susie and I were anchoring, and RJ, as you know, the lighting on a TV set back in those days especially was significant. It was hot under those lights, and there was a whole lot of lights. Susie and I are live on the air doing a newscast, and one of the lights went bang, burned out. I mean, it sounded like a gunshot.
It
bang.
did.
And Susie screamed. I was delivering my story. She was sitting right next to me. But this is what the viewers saw. I'm reading a story, and they hear bang. And praise the Lord, I didn't break. I kept reading it, but I'm thinking people think somebody got shot.
Yeah.
Were you on camera?
He was on camera.
I was on camera. She was sitting right next to me off camera, but she screamed. I mean, it was a loud bang.
So
And
did you
she
have to
screamed.
explain then that Susie wasn't shot? It was a light that went off in the
I
studio?
just kept reading the story
Pretending like nothing
with
happened.
a straight face. With a straight face.
No calls in the newsroom. Hey, what happened? Are you all okay?
I was just sure people thought somebody got shot.
Wow. Well, as you
But
know,
nobody did.
As you know, the resources were limited there, and the equipment that we had wasn't being fixed, or the engineers were doing their best to keep it all together. But that first winter, the winter of '82, I think it was like January '83. We only had that one show from 5 to 6 p.m. And you guys were like, well, we need to be live. It's a blizzard outside. So they opened up the garage door and they pointed one of the studio cameras outside.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they said, go.
We could expect heavy blowing and drifting of snow. If you don't have to go out anywhere, don't. Just stay inside, make a fire in the fireplace and a hot toddy, and my goodness. Well, that's all that we have for you right now, and it is snowing.
You stood out in the snow. It was neat. That was a neat touch.
It was fun. It was fun. We didn't have live trucks. We didn't have any of that. So the only way you could really go live was, or did you have a live truck?
No.
Yeah, there were those station wagons, the TV51 station wagons.
Yeah, but we didn't have the ability to do microwave.
No.
Live reporting. No, we didn't have that. Everything was taped.
Yeah, except for what was happening in the studio. So to have a live shot during a snowstorm out the garage door that was right off the studio was how we could fool them all.
Yeah, and if I recall, we did it more than once then. It worked so well the first time that we did it a couple of other times.
I think we actually did that when Robert E. and Frank was doing the weather.
Okay.
I think I have some old tape of that. And they were also sitting out. It might have been a snowstorm. They were sitting outside with an umbrella.
Yeah, I remember that one. But I'll tell you, RJ, I just remember a line from Jim O'Brien, and that reminds me of you. Jim O'Brien, the weatherman on Philadelphia Major Market, and he said there's a giant weather toad in the south that's going to leap up here and give us a weather wart.
Very interesting day today. First of all, Jen, 52 degrees, broke the record wide open today for the maximum in Caribou, Maine. That's the last house out, I want to tell you. And in our immediate corner of the country, it was in the upper 60s in a lot of places. But otherwise, this morning, it was about as raw as Rita Jen read. I got to tell you, it was really raw this morning before it warmed up in front of that system right there, which is now moving toward the New Jersey coast. And once it gets there, it's going to sort of explode again. And we got another day or so coming of what we've had for the past several days.
Jim O'Brien said it. You never said it, but you said similar things.
Well, I do remember one of the crosstalks where, you were reading your fun feature story, the transition from the hard news to get the weather.
And one of the key words, incidentally, in that contest was ratatouille. Can you spell ratatouille? Okay. Now, it's time to take a look at, it's a vegetable dish. Now it's time to take a look at the stock market report and what happened today on Wall Street. Indeed, the Dow Jones Industrial Averages staged a slight rally, closing up 0.47. Okay, how do you...
It's not, Jerry. It's ratatouille is not a vegetable dish.
Oh, it certainly is.
And no, a ratatouille is a little marking they put on the inner thigh of your pet rat. So, in case you lose it.
You've been watching too many weather
I
checks.
think so. Let's get to the weather, folks. It was a nice one out there today, and it's going to stay nice throughout the weekend. There's a low pressure up here in Michigan and a low pressure down here in northern Florida. They're going to zip on either side of us and not give us any kind of inclement weather whatsoever.
I said, no, it's a tattoo on the inside of your pet rat. and you put your head, and I was like, all right, let's go. That's how we were able to do the crosstalk.
It was fun.
Good times. It didn't last long, though. So it was that winter and then that spring and the hot summer, and then the writing was on the wall, wasn't it?
Yeah, we transitioned eventually to Home Shopping Network completely. Somewhere in 1983, late 1983.
Right. And we got word, Dr. Arant, who was there. Fascinating character. Do you have any stories about him? I did a quick look at his bio before I came on here.
I have
And
tons of stories.
yeah, I mean, he was briefly a DJ after his U.S. Navy school in Newport, just down the road here in Rhode Island, before he went to medical school at Temple. Graduated from Temple School, became an OBGYN and set up. Well, he first came and did his internship at Reading Hospital, and then he set up his own OBGYN practice. But where was it that there must have been some kind of a thread of him fascinated with broadcasting for him to be a DJ early on in his life, and then starting a TV station?
Yes. So I went on to become the general manager of TV51 when it was a home shopping network station. And I stayed there as general manager for 6 more years. So I worked very closely with Dr. Arant for many years. He was a visionary, and he had a desire for television. That was his heart's desire for many, many, many years. The problem was the difficulty of the challenge to operate an independent station in the peripheral Philadelphia market. But he was a visionary. The problem is he didn't have the money to do everything he wanted to do. And he spent money to do it that he didn't have. And
do you remember when we went, what was it, 5 or 6 weeks and we didn't get paid? But he came up with all of the money for everybody.
Yeah, it was difficult.
Well, yeah. I was only getting paid 2 hours a day minimum wage, so I don't remember if I went 6 weeks without pay or not.
No, you weren't there yet.
So this was happening. This is what I was walking into.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know what?
Couldn't tell the difference.
You know what? I didn't care because it was my first job in TV. And I was using every extra spare tape. I'm like, is anyone using this one? I'd record the show and I'd make a dub of it and they'd watch it. And like, no, I can do this better. And how can I do that better? Because I knew the writing was on the wall and this thing wasn't going to last.
Yeah. But I remember when the beloved singer Karen Carpenter passed away, you came to me and you said, Jeff, let me do the story on this. Because as a weatherman, that wasn't your job. And you emphatically said, I can do it. I can do it. And I remember that I said, okay, go ahead and do it. And you put together a beautiful piece because your background in music radio, you had a great familiarity with her music and with the concept of what her music was. And you did a great job on producing a news piece honoring Karen Carpenter.
Well, thank you. I don't have that tape. If you have it somewhere, let me know. I'd like to see it. But you know, I loved music so much. Jim O'Brien was coursing through me, right? And I came up with the idea to do these features called A Slice of Life, where I'd take.
I remember that.
I'd take a song and I'd make like a little local music video with it, which was, you know, I mean, it was experimental. It was nothing like the stuff they were putting on what MTV that had just launched. But it was fun, and it was local people, and it was, you know, Pieces of Ice.
Pieces of ice. Pieces of ice.
Where I went and shot video with one of the photographers at one of the ice plants, where in that summer they would chop up the ice, and I talked with the people and got images of them. You know, it was a fun, different way to integrate music into a local newscast.
The time of year when college students pack their bags and other belongings and head for home. They look forward to the summer.
I'm trying to assemble this mess.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that might have been an offshoot from the Karen Carpenter piece that you did.
I'm not sure, but you did hire me as not just a weatherman, but to be a reporter. Or I'm not sure. Maybe I just
No, I
my
hired,
way.
no, the original hire was weather. That's why it was only 2 hours at minimum wage. But you had a good insight to be able to do some things. And I thought it was fun. We had a fun group. We were small but mighty and fun.
Jeffrey, I sent you a link, and I sent it to you too, Susie. You didn't have a chance to see it, but there's a bunch of guys in this little clip where you're sending a video postcard that didn't get broadcast. It was sent on one of those big U-matic tapes.
Just kidding, Steve.
I want to see something. This is
Actually,
important.
it's been more like no. And now here's Mary Ann Banks to tell you
Mary,
why
will you
the
please come
ratings
here?
have gone up.
Bruce looks like a
Can everyone get in
director
here?
with the shades on.
Hi, Steve. Hope you're having fun.
Is this it now? Is this?
Everyone just wanted to say hi. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Hope you're doing real good and that you're making lots of money, and we miss you.
Hey, let me get in here, will you?
Wait. And Carl has something special to say to you.
Hey, how's the cabas out there, kid?
Steve, I just want to thank you for letting this jacket back here for me. Hey, that'll ruin the camera.
But there's Brad Bohr is in there. Koralski, I think that was one of the guys' names. Do you remember some of the support staff, the engineer, the studio crew?
Yes.
Oh, sure.
Talk about them.
Well,
how important they were.
Okay, so the first thing to understand is just because we were a small station doesn't mean we didn't have talent and ability. We had a really good group of people. Our off the air personalities, technicians were really good. We had excellent technicians, videographers, editors, directors. The behind the scenes people really did a good job. People don't understand what goes into a television broadcast. It's very complicated, including chief engineers. When you think about what does it take to take that a camera points at something and then it ends up going through the air and being picked up in people's homes through cable or antennas. It's an amazingly complicated technical issue. And we had guys that knew how to do it, how to take care of it. So again, just because we were small doesn't mean that we didn't have a lot of talent. We did, on
Susie,
and off the air.
Susie, what do you recall about some of the engineering staff and some of the people who are behind the scenes?
Well, I remember one of the guys in particular that I got friendly with. His name was Len Klupp, and he worked in master control. And it turned out that I worked with him at WEEU for many years. He was one of our main news people. And so, I didn't know that. I didn't know that he was, any kind of, that he had any on-air experience or anything else, but he did. And he had taken that chance, just like the rest of us did, to try something new and maybe have another door open for us. So there were a lot of people that worked behind the scenes that worked very hard and were very dedicated. And, a lot of them, they did use TV51 as a stop-off point. We had a cameraman named Ren Hendricks he was a hoot, and he had a wonderful personality.
He was fun.
Oh my gosh, he was, and he would do anything. Any job that needed to be done, he was there and he would do it. So there were quite a few people that were behind the scenes that were really, really good.
Now, you mentioned Leonard Klupp. He had, when I was there, he was teleprompter operator doing, a lot of everything. As most people were doing. And then our sports guy had left. Was it Ross McCallum?
Yes.
And he got a job elsewhere, but there was nothing in the budget. They were like, no. So they said, let Len Klupp do the sports.
Yes, that's right. He did. And he did that. And he was like a jack of all trades, and he tried everything.
And then Leonard Klupp called in sick one day and they needed to do the sports. So guess what Jeffrey said? I'll go right. I'm like, I don't know anything about sports, Jeffrey. He's like, yeah, I'll write the script.
All you have to do is read it.
And I did.
We got lots of stuff going on down there. In the sports action tonight, though, Montreal again beat the Philadelphia Phillies last night 4-3. The Phillies are now third in the National League East, behind the St. Louis Cardinals, who also lost last night, this time to the New York Mets, the score 7-5.
I fooled him because I have the tape of that. RJ on sports. That's I was like,
well, okay, so likewise, back in the earlier days when the first newscast was on and I was a news reporter, I had to fill in to do the weather one night. And we had AccuWeather. So we would get the report from AccuWeather and then we would just follow what they said. And I said, I'd never done the weather in my life. And I said, there's a stationary front. This is what AccuWeather told me. There's a stationary front here. And I stopped and I said, you know what a stationary front is, don't you? It's a writing paper store owned by the mafia. And whoever was on camera, the camera people in the studio guffawed out loud.
well, that was the fun of it. And, hearing some of that stuff allowed me to have a little fun too. So, Jim O'Brien had the magnetic boards at Channel 6.
Hotspot Palm Springs, another rainstorm on the way. Once we get shut of what we got. Okay, for the region, no big change. That is because the weather continues to roll out of the Pacific directly across the country to our neck of the woods.
And I was like, okay, there's no budget to do any of these. So I started making my own. I made, I made a house, because we were doing a promotion.
The nation's hot spot. On the regional map, temps range from 68 in Pottsville to 80 degrees in Philadelphia. And with this little house, we're saying hi to the folks in Milford Square, just west of Quakertown. The folks there entered the Sizzler of 51 contest.
Sizzler of 51, and, hey, people checking in from, Leola, Pennsylvania, and, that was a way to say hi and interact with them too. It was a great experience. What's your fondest memory, Susie, of the brief time at TV51? And were you let down when it was all over?
Well, the people that was what was important. They were wonderful, and made some very good friends, and it was a good experience. It was a wonderful learning experience. It was amazing how many celebrities that we had that went through TV51 between the shows that Jeffrey did and the news interviews that we did and his guests that he had on. And during the hour newscast, I had the opportunity to interview some different people for longer interviews. And it was great. I mean, that part was wonderful, but it was a real learning experience, and the people were great. They were super.
Were you sad to see it go?
Oh, sure, yeah, because we just kept hoping and hoping and hoping that things were going to work out, that it would be okay, but. I was always uncomfortable with the recognition that we, would get from time to time. I was much more comfortable with the anonymity of radio, and I found that was more comfortable in the long run. After the whole TV 51 thing was over with.
So you didn't want to pursue a TV career going further after that?
No,
because you were good, Suze.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
but I was also older, and
you weren't that old. You were mature. You were at your peak.
Well, yeah, especially, but yeah, I was at my peak then, and now the females, they're probably between 25 and 30, and you still don't see a lot of older women on TV. Especially doing news. They're all young and gorgeous, and so. Yeah, I was sad to see it go, but it had its time, and I enjoyed it. And like I said, I learned a lot, made a lot of good friends, and so it was a good experience.
And you went back to radio then afterwards?
Yes, yes, among a few other things, but primarily yes, I went back to radio.
So you did radio, and then you started a broadcasting school. Briefly tell us about that.
Well, I joined other people that I had worked with in radio before. Don Greth, who was a local radio personality and a very good friend. He and an engineer named Gerhard Clem he was the engineer at Y102, and I had known him from there. And the two of them had started a broadcast school, and then they eventually invested and purchased a radio station in New Jersey. So they needed someone to come in and run the broadcast school while they were taking care of their business in New Jersey. So that's how I got involved in the school, and it was a great experience because you got to meet kids that were interested in getting involved in the business. And of course, everybody that came into the school to teach, they were all local radio personalities. And when I say local, not only in the immediate Reading area, but Lancaster, Lebanon, Harrisburg, Philadelphia. We had people from a good 50 to 70 mile radius. And so we had a good mix, and it was a small school, but we turned out some people that ended up with some pretty good jobs in some fairly well-paying markets.
Was it just in radio, or did you do any TV at that school?
We did do a little TV. And not a whole lot, but we did do some because that would have been a far more expensive endeavor to really get into larger equipment. So we had smaller cameras, but it was the idea. It was the idea of how to present yourself in front of the camera. That was the important thing, and how to present yourself in front of the camera. So we tried to do that on a budget.
Now, Jeffrey, so you didn't pursue broadcasting after Channel 51 went away?
Well, as I said, after the news department vanished, I became the general manager, and I was general manager for 6 years, and then I got fired. We were in Chapter 11. Bankruptcy protection. We were still operating, but under bankruptcy code. And a new owner came in, and I got fired. And that was actually the best thing that ever happened to me, because first of all, we were going nowhere. But I had a transition with an amazing encounter with Almighty God. And I've, for the past 35 years, been in full-time traveling ministry. Been literally traveling all over the country and preaching the gospel from the Jewish perspective, because I'm a Jewish man who loves Jesus. That's a Messianic Jew.
Like when you grew up, if you grew up in an American home, did you talk about Buddha when you were a kid? No, it's the same way with a Jewish home. We don't talk about Jesus. We just don't. It's not even in the conversation. So there I am, not believing Jesus was anything, and now I'm an atheist. Friends, you cannot get any more lost than being a Jewish atheist. And I stayed an atheist into my teens, into my 20s, into my 30s. 24 years of my life, a Jewish atheist. And friends, you already can figure out I wasn't quiet about it. 24 years of blaspheming God openly. But I thought I was the best guy in the world. I never smoked, I never drank, I never used drugs, not even once. I drove the speed limit. When I was a kid, I hung up all my clothes. I mean, you get in the picture here, in the dictionary next to the word good, a picture of me. I thought I was terrific, and all you had to do was ask me, and I'd have told you. I did it right. I didn't do bad things like those people did, and I thought I never sinned.
And so I didn't look back. I loved my broadcasting days. I loved radio. I loved television. It was enjoyable. It was fun. But ministry is the call of my life. And of course, one other thing, when you talk about favorite things that happen, as you both know, I ended up marrying one of my coworkers who was a news reporter who used the name Karen Kay. It's actually Karen Kaharchik. She used the name Karen Kay because people will say, how do you spell your last name? She used to say K alphabet. Kaharchik. It's a Polish name with all kinds of letters in it. But we got married while I was still at TV51. But I never looked back. I look back in fond memories, but I never looked back to saying, I wish I were in broadcasting again.
And you had 4 kids?
We do. I have an older son who lives in Hawaii and a very successful businessman. And then Karen and I had 3 boys.
Nice. And you, Suze, you were doing the whole family thing throughout this whole thing?
Oh yeah, yes. While I was at TV51, I had 4 teenagers at home, so that was very interesting. And I went on to work in at 2 radio stations actually, and then 3 different times I worked for Boscov's. So.
Yes. Now there's a Boscov's that came to Providence Place a number of years ago. That took the place of the Nordstrom store, and yes. I got the feature story to do that. And when I was there speaking with Albert Boscov, I said, I had my first TV station was Channel 51 in Reading. He goes, "Oh yeah, Susie Sands. That's her voice going through the store, but talking about the sales." And I was like, "That's great." A little connection from the earlier days.
Yes, and that was fun working for him too. He was quite a character.
All right. Well, we've taken up a chunk of all your day here, getting this thing worked out. Anything else you wanna end with to this little experiment I'm doing here?
Yeah, I just want to say that working in broadcasting is a dream come true for us, for you, for Susie, and for me, and for all of us who worked in television. I think that I tell people all the time that I had jobs other people only dream about. And, there are tons of people, kids and adults, who dream about being in radio and television, and we did it. We were blessed.
Yes, I agree. It was a hoot.
It certainly was. And, after TV51, I sputtered back into radio down in Lancaster. But I was sending out those last tapes that I was able to make with the last tapes that were available dubbing. I think I took the last the last available tape that was in there and made a dub, and there was a job opening in Naples, Florida. Now, they finally did give me the midday shift at FM 97 in Lancaster full time, because I'd been doing part time knowing that TV 51 was going to be sputtering. But I sent a tape down to Newswatch 9, a cable outfit in Naples, Florida, and I got the job. But I had 3 or 4 months being back on FM 97 doing middays, but I had to resurrect the Reverend Bob and put it on at 12 noon at lunchtime. And then the Lancaster paper came out and said, "Can we do a little feature story?" I'm like, "Sure, that'd be fun." And then it came out, and it was the whole front page of the lifestyle section with my fist clenched up in the air, doing my, "This is the Reverend Bob. You've all been sinning bad, haven't you?" With gasping oohs and ahs and clapping in the background, some bumbling radio reverend.
So maybe you were the big influence for Jeffrey.
Well, and no disrespect intended there, Jeffrey. But one other caveat, and this comes to mind. You know, we had talked about Jim O'Brien. Well, it was that September as the writing was on the wall at TV51, and I was working part-time weekends at FM 97 in Lancaster. And I had met him once at Temple University by chance. I was spinning records, paying my way through college, working in radio jobs in Trenton and in Camden, New Jersey. And I got another part-time gig spinning the records for happy hour at a place called PT's in Front and Market Streets in Philadelphia. Now, mind you, I had never met Jim O'Brien in my whole life. I went to Temple so I could see him on TV and hear him on the radio again after watching him since I was in third grade in Yardley, Pennsylvania. So I'm spinning records at this happy hour, and there's this commotion at the front door. And I'm like, what's going on? In walks Jim O'Brien and Jim Gardner.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay, this is cosmic. Now, how do I get his attention without going up and saying, hey, Jim, what's the weather? What's it going to be like tomorrow? Like everyone else was doing. So I flipped through the records and I found a song that I thought would be perfect to get his attention. I flipped it on. It was Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. As soon as the first two notes of that come, he gets up from his table and he's like looking around. He comes up and he goes, hi, I'm Jim O'Brien. I was like, no shit, man. Yeah. He goes, why'd you play that song? I said, well, you were my mentor and you didn't know it. And now by chance you're coming in here. And he laughed, that big, bellowy, big strapping Texas laugh he had. And for the next half hour, he read me the riot act as to, you want to get into broadcasting? I was like, yeah. He goes, it's a terrible business. It's going to be hard on relationships. And, you know, you're not going to make any money in the beginning until you get good at what you do. And you have to move across the country. And so that's the summation of it. And after a half hour, he says, so you still want to do it? I said, yeah. He goes, why? I said, because you did it. He goes, then go for it. And he turned around and walked away. Never saw him again. Fast forward to the waning days of TV 51. It's now September of '83. Right? I'm doing the radio in Lancaster while still doing TV 51 Newsbeat. I was doing the radio in Lancaster on the weekends. And the hotline rings when I'm on the air. They said, RJ was one of my coworkers. They were at the York Fair, and he goes, RJ, do you know Jim O'Brien? I said, well, you know, I met him once at PT's in front. They're like, no, do you know him? I said, well, you know, I just like that one time, that was it. They said, well, he just came up to our FM 97 booth at the York Fair. He's out there shooting a story on Willie Nelson or one of the guys. And he said, you tell RJ we were listening to him on the radio and he sounds great. Go for it. Oof.
Wow.
I was floored, right? That he remembered me after a couple of years and he found me on the radio and he's going out to the York Fair and he found the FM 97 booth to say hi. So that weekend, I went to TV 51, dubbing off one of my air check tapes, and I'm typing up a letter to send it to him. And a coworker, I can't remember who it was, came up to me and said, RJ, who are you sending that to? I said, to Jim O'Brien. They said, didn't you hear? He was jumping out of an airplane today. Still gets me every time.
Good evening. Rob's on vacation. I'm Chris Wagner. Our top story tonight is one that has devastated all of us here at Action News. Our friend, our news anchor, our weatherman, Jim O'Brien, died today. It happened at 12:30 this afternoon in New Hanover Township, Montgomery County. Jim was skydiving, the thing he loved to do more than almost anything else. The police tell us that his parachute got tangled up in a friend's parachute and that he couldn't free himself in time to break his fall.
Jim O'Brien's death today is a profound loss to Channel 6. For me, it is an incalculable personal loss, but perhaps just as significantly, his death is an indescribable loss to all of you. The question most often asked of me over the last years has been, what is Jim O'Brien really like? Is he really as wild and funny as he seems? Well, if the truth be known, of course, Jim had the ability to make us all laugh, and he did that with great regularity. But the fact is that Jim O'Brien was the most intensely serious and driven person I have ever known, committed to the excellence of his work, the success of this organization and committed to those things in life that he felt were important. And as far as I am concerned, that is the legacy that Jim O'Brien has left. Many of us here feel that Action News has been something of a family. We also recognize that someone like Jim has, in a very definite way, been a part of your family. Most of you have never met him personally, but many of you will shed some tears tonight. Undoubtedly, many of you already have. We certainly will understand if you do. There have been many tears spilled here at Channel 6, and there will be many more. Jim, we will miss you more than you could ever know. Chris.
Thanks, Jim.
It was like he was just days before. It was like he was reaching out, passing the torch before he took off. But that's my Brian's story. But I hope I did him justice in my career since then.
I'm sure you made him proud.
I still feel he's around. I really do. I'm like, oh, I get the hair stand up on the neck and the arms, and I'm like, hi, Jim.
Yeah, he was one of a kind. He sure was.
Well, anything else, Susie, Jeffrey? I thank you so much for doing this.
I wasn't really sure what you were going to do, so I probably should have fixed myself up a little bit better, but
You look terrific.
It is what it is. What can I say?
Jeffrey, anything else?
It was fun. Thanks for the opportunity.
Hey, Jeffrey D, tell Karen I said hello.
Yes. Tell her I said hi too.
I will.
And happy trails.
Same to you.
God bless you guys.
Let's be in touch, okay?
Okay.
Right,
thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Shalom.
We're TV51, WTVE, Reading.
TV through the tunnel of time.
There'll be more stories to come featured on TV through the tunnel of time.com and down the broadcast trail.
TV through the tunnel of time.
Sponsored by Rock's Fresh Foods with 2 locations in Rhode Island, Narragansett and West Greenwich, Date Appraisals of Florida, and Motif Magazine, Southern New England's premier arts magazine for everything local. Be sure to listen to music through the tunnel of time.com. All genres, all eras of contemporary music with today's hits and amazing oldies. Download the app too, simply by searching the acronym MTTTOT, Music Through the Tunnel of Time, in your favorite app store. Or screenshot the QR code or scan it now. Share it to your friends and followers.
Music through the tunnel of time.
I'm RJ Heim. Catch you next time.